Hi there, it's Cheryl Sitz. Welcome you back to another episode of Exploring Possibilities. Today, we're going to dive into dream work, lucid dreaming, astral travel, symbols, all that cool stuff. I'm excited about the show and I'm glad you're joining us again. And this one's on video. So if you'd like to come to youtube.com/Cheryl Sitz, you can see our bright, shining faces too. I have Lee Adams joining me. So check us out there. And we're on all the usual audio feeds. Let's see, where we're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Play, Stitcher, and others. The entire library is on journeyofpossibilities.com, where you can catch every episode we've ever done and show us a little love while you're there at journeyofpossibilities.com/support. And joining us in just a moment is going to be Lee Adams. Lee Adams has been practicing, researching, and teaching lucid dreaming for over 20 years now. He has a bachelor's degree in psychology, and he's pursuing a PhD as well at Pacifica Graduate Institute. He runs the podcast Cosmic Echo?
Cosmic Echo, yeah.
Awesome. And he founded the online community taileaters.com. I love that symbol too. We got to talk about that. He joins us today from his hometown of Port Orchard, Washington. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for having me on the show.
So glad you're with us. I'm still trying to get used to this video thing. I've hid behind the microphone for years, and now it's like, okay, I'll turn on a camera.
Yeah, it's a little strange.
I like the personal touch, though. It's nice.
Yeah, it's like having a conversation, especially in today's world when you can't really sit across for somebody so easily.
Exactly. I think we're all really starving for touch of some sort, even if it's just face-to-face touch through this. It's better than nothing, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I want to show a copy of your book here. I really enjoyed it. I read every book that I interview the author because I think it would be so disrespectful to have you on and have not even taken the time to read your book. But as I was just sharing with you, I have not actually lucid dreamed myself personally that I'm aware of. So I was like, well, I hope he doesn't feel insulted that I'm having him on and I haven't actually done it. But there's so much in here for dreamers of all types. So I thought we could still have plenty to talk about. And I have a lot of friends that are into lucid dreaming. So I know they're really going to value what you share with us today.
Right. Yeah.
So you started lucid dreaming pretty young, didn't you?
Yeah. Well, since as far as I can remember, my dreams had pretty much contained some portion of lucidity in them. So, but I didn't really get into lucid dreaming until about 2006 when I had my first real sleep paralysis type experience. And that really opened the world of the dream experience up for me. So that was pretty profound as well as terrifying. So, but it redirected my focus back into dreams. And then I continued studying dreams and studying the psychological aspects of dreams, and then kind of went into it in getting my undergrad, really focused into dream psychology, started to understand like Carl Jung's symbology and stuff like that. So it was a good start. So but yeah, lucid dreaming has been part of my life for a long time now, and continues to be that way. So it's been great.
So I guess if we're talking about it, we should probably start with lucid dreaming is actually being aware that you're dreaming while you're dreaming, right? Is that the short definition? Or
yeah, that's a good definition. Most people, they kind of imply that lucid dreaming has some type of control or anything like that in it, and I don't. My definition's pretty simple. Being lucid means having some type of awareness. So there's different versions of awareness that you can have in dreams as well as waking life. But to be lucid in a dream means that you have some type of awareness that you're actively dreaming at that moment. Many people, when I tell them that definition, they realize they probably have had a lucid dream before where you're in a dream and suddenly you kind of realize that you may be dreaming, or you see yourself from a different perspective. And that that this is some type of dream experience or some type of story being played out. So even in those experiences, even though most people would maybe not define that as a lucid dream, there is still some type of awareness involved in that. And so that would be considered to me partially lucid dream too, so it has some type of awareness. So, that's the very basics of it. People on top of that, they imply different awareness levels, such as like out of body experiences and astral projection, as well as like like the hypnagogia and hypnopompia and things like that, which are all involved into some portion of lucid dreaming, as well as like sleep paralysis. So that would be considered, a lucid dream as well.
So you do a great job in this book of walking us through all the steps of, so you want a lucid dream, here's everything you need to know. I mean, you really give us everything we need to know, from how to involve supplements to how to become more lucid, that we are dreaming, which is really meditation's kind of a gateway for that, and awareness in our daily life. I like where you talk about reality checks. I flagged up a spot here that I thought I would read to kind of give people a dive into what your book is like, and what your view on dreaming is. So you say here on getting past the simulation, when you're in a dream, it is as if you're in a simulation, much like a video game that is mimicking the reality you experience while awake. Most of the time, you aren't truly aware you're in a simulation. You're just passively experiencing the dream. In a lucid dream, you know you're in the simulation. Just as with a video game, once you know you're working with the simulation, you can find the controls and learn how to operate them. With additional training and heightened awareness, you can eventually get past the simulation entirely and begin communicating directly with what Jung called the objective psyche. I love that definition and explanation. And give us a little hint in why in the world would I need to communicate with my objective psyche?
Well, that's a good question, and at the beginning of the book, I talk about why. So I think why is a good place to start, like why would anybody do anything at all? So it's a very big question, and that's why I lead off the book with that. It could be its own book itself. I'm sure books are written on the subject of why we do the things we do, like what is free will and things like that. But so that I think the why is independent of each person. Some people feel drawn to kind of have to ask that question, or to experience awareness in such ways that they normal, quote unquote, normal people don't. And sometimes it happens to you regardless if you choose to or not. It just is something that presents itself, such as the case for me. I had awareness in my dreams without really doing anything at all, and without really trying. And so I spent most of my time in my life trying to understand the experience versus trying to get it. Um, and in doing so, that's where I've come up to realize there's techniques and things like that that can really assist people. And I've used those techniques as well, because lucidity, just like in waking life, isn't a consistent thing. You have to work at it, and sometimes it comes and it goes. So we hit people that are normal people that have lucid dreams typically hit like dry spells and things like that, and then kind of have to reactivate the machine and start it up again, and engage with the unconscious to try to uh, build the communication. So, but why would you want to do this? I think the benefits are tremendous in having lucid dreams. Working with fear is primarily one of the biggest advantages for me in my life. I had a lot of trauma early on in my life. I've also served in the military, so there's trauma involved in that, as well as working with fear in those high intensity experiences, that I encountered with the military. So in encountering fearful experiences and dreams, I was able to kind of take that externally into my waking life as well, because dreams don't necessarily end when you wake up. So they bleed over, and they also influence our waking experiences. And so when you work with trauma and fear and things like that, and you bring it into the waking experience, you can really kind of have a different approach to those experiences when you encounter them, or working with them from previous like PTSD and things like that.
Mhm.
And there's plenty of research showing that lucid dreams have great advantage for people with PTSD, because it's a safer environment than working with PTSD and waking experiences.
Yes.
And also, it can be very challenging in the sense that you can't really necessarily run away from it when you're in a dream. So the advantages of that is seen in psychedelics as well, where
Mhm.
somebody can kind of have a experience, they can't necessarily stop that experience, because that's their initial reaction, is to kind of get away from that and not really encounter it. And so running through those experiences and facing it really can be healing. And and it can be traumatizing itself too, if you're not really prepared for it mentally, with psychedelics. Dreams, on the other hand, I don't necessarily think that they present us with things that we can't actually work through. It's presented in such a way that, when we acknowledge it and we actually communicate with the dream, it's something that we can work through. So I don't think there's any real evidence that says that we experience a dream that is so overwhelming that it's not something that we can bear, the weight of.
Right.
So um, so it's very healing in that sense. A lot of people, we live in a culture that's very like A type personality and wants to uh, get something out of the dreams. And I would say that um, creativity can be found in dreams that can be expressed in waking life. Lots of people throughout history have solved complex things that they've worked on through dreams. And in a lucid dream, you have the ability to um, use your imagination in ways that you typically wouldn't in dream spaces, as also in waking life. I've experienced things in lucid dreams where I manifest complex archetype, not archetypes, but architecture, and art that I've never imagined myself being capable of in waking life, or even making music in ways that I've never thought capable in waking life. And bringing some of that into the waking world has really been eye-opening for me. It says, oh, you are an artist, you are capable of this. It may take you time to learn the skills to do this in waking reality, because waking reality is a little bit more complex.
Yeah.
but but you have the potential, you have this huge potential that you're you're not limited to. The limitation is what you think you can do. So um, I'm not one to think that people are unlimited in all aspects, that we definitely have limitations, like somebody missing a leg may not be able to run as well as somebody else, and things like that, without assistance, things like that. Um, but in the realm of the imagination, uh, the limit, I think, is pretty limitless. So
Right. Well, and you kind of almost touched on something that I'm seeing as a recurring theme in almost every conversation, every book. It's like we're waking up to the power of our own intent, our own intention. So you talk about it in your book too, that it's setting the intention that I'm going to have a lucid dream and doing the work to prepare the stage. But I'm reminded of an interview I did. I wish I could remember. Daniel Schmidt was his name, I think, who runs a meditation center in Canada. And he said, for so long, I was like, I would sit down and I'm ready to meditate and I'm ready to hit that Zen space. And the minute you focus on the Zen space, you don't get there. Your mind starts. So it's almost like, how do I go from I'm going to have a lucid dream to actually getting out of my way to have that lucid dream or have
right.
that meditation go where I want it to go?
Yeah, definitely. And going back to your original questions, I kind of missed it. You know, encountering like the higher self, um, a lot of lucid dreamers, they kind of initially kind of want to control the dream experience. They have this, new ability, and it's like, what would you do if you were essentially God of your own world? What would you try to do, And so we tend to go through these phases where, it's initially it's this cool shocking experience. You're like, wow, I can create things, and then you kind of go through this experience where you become almost like godlike, but you uh, control things in sometimes horrific ways, like taking advantage of your dream characters and things like that. And you kind of, if you have the awareness, you can reflect on it and see how damaging that could be. And then eventually, and hopefully people get to the point where they go, okay, well, um, you know, and sometimes the dreams start fighting back too. That's a common theme, is eventually the dream will start fighting back, and it'll essentially put you in your place and say, no, you are not you are not the god of this world. And you may think that, but this is not that's not the case. And then you'll see eventually that there seems to be a better way, and that essentially is giving the control back to the dream and letting it show you, where some of your blind spots, and where it's trying to teach you, where it's trying to lead you, and things like that. So that's kind of where I was trying to get to with the part of my book, is essentially you can do all those things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't or that it's not part of the process, but there is a different aspect to dream experiences where you give back the control. You have the capability of doing it, but you decide not to, and you give the control over, and you contain the awareness as you do that, so that you can have awareness and then experience something in a dream that most people never really get to. And that can be very profound and beautiful, and also teach you things about yourself that you never thought were possible. But in terms of like getting to have lucid dream experiences, there's like very basic techniques to do that people should really stick to, because they work consistently for most people. And I touch on those in my book, very clearly, like, or write it out. I also explore other techniques that aren't as effective but may help some people, and then also like the supplements on top of that, where some people, I've used psychedelics in the past, and so I never really, and throughout that time, I've kind of come to this point where I'm like, I don't really need those anymore, but I see the value in it. And some people, continually use them, and I always thought, well, maybe that's a bad thing, this kind of like obsessive use of the psychedelic. And but then I realized, some people are going through a process that's not the same as me, and I shouldn't really, say, well, this is bad for you or this is good for you. It's the experience, that you're having. And for me, sometimes I needed that first experience with psychedelics to see a different view of how things are,
Yeah.
the shaman type aspect to
Right.
reality, and how different that is from other experiences I've had. And in doing so, that made me aware of things that I typically wouldn't be aware of. And so supplements, can give people sometimes that nudge to have that first lucid dream experience, and then they can put in the hard work if they decide to really kind of have a consistent experience. I treat lucid dreams as a practice, just like any other practice that takes hard work and is lifelong. It's not something you just, okay, I'm going to do this for a month and then I'm going to be an expert at it. There's no such thing as the expert. And even if you were having lucid dreams consistently every single night, let's say, um, dreams are infinite, and the learning that you can get from dreams is infinite. So it'll take you on infinite directions that you'll never really reach the end of. So
One of the things that you talked about in the book that I found was interesting. Well, I found the whole book interesting, but you were talking about why we struggle to remember our dreams, and I hadn't really dove into that before. And I know that I really do struggle to remember my dreams. If I don't get it down right away, like it starts to slip away very quickly. And if I'm remembering right, you were explaining that it's the part of the mind that remembers dreams is shut down when we're actually dreaming, and so there's not the access to remember it, and that supplements can help with that, or practice can. Please decipher that in English for us.
well, memory is very complex, so there's no real like clear answer in the proper way to remember everything. I study memory as one of my main studies, I think, of trying to understand what memory is and how it works and operates. Like, for instance, there's some people on this planet that literally remember every single experience they've ever had. Um, and there's some interviews of those people, and it's pretty amazing. They've done studies on them to essentially try to prove that these people are capable of doing this. And then no one knows why they can do that. You could try to explain it away with some chemical reaction in the brain or something like that, but it's just no one knows. And I've written some of the top researchers, neurologists on memory, and they essentially said, I don't know. And they said, your guess is as good as mine of how memory is working. But if you look at chemicals in the brain, they are involved in memory, as well as like you know, deficiencies in those chemicals can definitely affect memory. And so there is a chemical in the brain that generally is lower during REM, and that's acetylcholine. And so improving acetylcholine can absolutely improve uh, your memory of the experience of dreams. It's been peer reviewed and shown to be very effective. So galantamine is one of the most profound supplements that I've found, as well as many people that I respect and research dreams and memory. Galantamine is one of the most effective. And there's oddly a folklore about galantamine, and referenced, most likely referenced in the Odyssey as the plant that allowed the people that were turned into swines to essentially remember who they were, and then turn back into people during the Odyssey. I forget the full story. I'm not very good with myths, but in remembering the stories, but you can look that one up. But it's people believe that that is probably what plant they were referring to. And it's galantamine is also a powerful plant because it affects not only acetylcholine, but a thing called glutamate and nicotonic receptors in the brain and the system. And those have a great effect to create out of body experiences, as well as like near death experiences. So it's I consider galantamine as a psychedelic, a dream psychedelic, and it should be very well respected when you utilize it. I've had some pretty horrific dreams with galantamine, and it's not super common for people to have that, but it's common enough that I've read plenty of reports on it. So just something to be cautious of. And I do caution people on the use of supplements in my book, and trying to, take a middle path with that, like
Right.
everything in moderation. So
Ease into
yeah.
it, and one at a time, or what. Yeah, take good care with them, respect them. I like that. Yeah, I feel the same about any plants as medicine. Is please be respectful in how you approach them, because they can, even the slightest ones can be very powerful in before you know it.
Yeah. We try to, I mean, us, Westerners, I guess, and most of the world now tend to think of plants as just chemicals,
Right.
and then we reduce it to specifically one chemical. And so galantamine, right? It's a chemical. It's
Right.
extracted from many different plants, and so that's what we think. But what we don't realize is that these plants most likely change the chemical structure, the chemical experience that we're having in our brain, and the vibration of our brain that it's beating at, essentially, and also pressure and things like that in our brain, and cerebral spinal fluid and blood and all these things. And it creates this complex experience where we're kind of, new age terms, resonating at a different frequency, and you
Mm-hmm.
encounter things that are on that frequency and that you typically would not. And I know your listeners probably will resonate with this.
Yep.
so um,
Definitely.
so I've, I was I would say materialist not too long ago, where I was trying to prove dreams. I was trying to prove and look at the chemicals and things like that. And so if you read my book, you can find some of that in there, because these chemicals are real, but what they're doing is affecting us in many layers, not just the physical layer,
Yeah.
and it's changing our fields and things like that. So it's very important to be cautious of that. My Buddhist teacher from my undergrad school, and good friend of mine, he told me, KISS, keep it simple, stupid,
Yes.
and that's probably the best advice I ever got from anybody. And I've gone back to it over and over again in my life. It's like, I need to keep it simple. And yes, I'm stupid. So, um, however smart I think I am. So, to keep it simple is find a practice, that works, and keep
Right.
it consistent, and try not to add too many things into it.
Yes,
So
absolutely. Well, I'm looking at the clock and I'm just going to go ahead and tell listeners we're going to go a little bit long today because we're already at 25 minutes and I've got at least two more topics I want to dive into for a few minutes each. So just get comfortable in your seat because there's plenty of juicy stuff coming up here. I think the next thing I want to touch on, because you've spoken to it a couple of times, the scary parts, right? Because there are, and I told you I had a dream where I died and that kind of shut me off from dreams for a while. And I'm just now getting back to where I'm comfortable interacting with my dreams again. Um, so our biggest fears can come up, and it's happened to me also in working with entheogens and ceremony, so psychedelics, whatever. So it seems like whatever pathway we take into consciousness, into working with the unconscious and bringing it into consciousness, that's the wall between, right? Is this fear that's going to come up for all of us. And so speak a little bit to how you feel like working with your dreams has helped you to enter that realm and conquer those fears. Like you mentioned, that's actually how you started going into the lucid dreaming, was you had that paralyzation. So speak to some of the fears that have come up for you and how you feel like this has been a helpful path for you to overcome those.
yeah, well, my first experience is sleep paralysis, and sleep paralysis can be terrifying by itself, but usually associated with what they call hypnagogic hallucinations. And and so you're paralyzed, you can't move, and then you see things that typically should not be there. And in many of these cases, these things attack you, and try to fight you. And that can be terrifying because you can't fight back, you know. And also it's new and scary because you don't know what's going on. You think it's real. It's as real as you and I, if not more real. And so I've used psychedelics, and I can understand the fear associated with those experiences. But typically when with your using psychedelics, you can open your eyes, and some of those visions can kind of bleed away. Um, and also the anxiety of psychedelics for me is kind of the experience of the psychedelic itself versus like the hallucinations. And so that could be kind of the trauma associated with them. But in lucid dreams, in sleep paralysis, it's very real. You cannot open your eyes and get away from it. It's there, and it's as real as anything, if not more real. And the fear that you feel is chemically and physiologically is the most intense fear that you could possibly ever experience, because the brain is hyperactive in the fear region, which is the amygdala, and it does that naturally for unknown reasons every night for people. So um, it's something that happens when we go into REM, and so, but it's terrifying. But when you encounter that and you're able to kind of allow that experience to happen versus kind of resist it and fight it, you learn something very profound about yourself in relationship to being vulnerable to something that you don't understand fully, and also being confident in yourself that you'll be okay, and that nothing can eventually, essentially destroy you. So it creates a profound being, in there, in the sense that if you can at least remember that and bring it into your waking life, and kind of into your future dreams, that confidence in yourself and the ability to protect yourself, and that you have that ability, will change everything. It changes you down to the core. I'm not somebody that would come on your show and say I'm fearless. I experience terror, scary dreams just like everybody else. But through going through these experiences over and over and over again, I learn something through that experience versus just something that you can read in a book. And I really start to develop a sense of self, and a sense of um, foundation in myself, and the ability to encounter those things and not be so fearful all the time. And also a relationship with those things too. And but I have uh, I mean, I know that your dream is very traumatic for you, the dying dream, but I've died so many times in my dreams, it's
Yeah.
ridiculous. I've been shot in the head, I've had my head cut off, things like that, and
I'm
and
sure
those,
these listeners are going, really? Wow, I want a lucid dream. Huh? I want that.
yeah, I mean, not all, I'm not saying most of those were not lucid, either. But fear to me is something that's very profound, and I've used it in my life. I'm very fear driven before, so it's a great training tool, and it's a tool, and I think it's a friend actually. I think suffering is a friend, and pain is a friend, and all that stuff is a friend. That
I agree.
once you build a relationship with it, it doesn't look the same. And you could stop listening to other people about how bad it is.
Yeah.
So for my dreams and my experience, I changed the dialogue from it being a negative to a positive, and in doing so, it gives me profound strength. And
Yeah.
and so, but on the other side, I've had beautiful dreams, that have taken me to places that I never possibly could imagine thinking that I could imagine, and learn things from beings and spirits and all that stuff about myself. And most of my dreams today are teaching dreams where I encounter something else, is seemingly something else, and it's teaching me something about reality, about people, about my experience in the world. And I felt that it's leading to me something very positive, and for me, not everybody, I had to work through that fear. They call it the guardian of the threshold. If you face the guardian, and
Mhm.
it's trying to protect you in a sense that says, if you cannot overcome me, then you're not ready for this other stuff. So turn away, until you are. And some people encounter that guardian over and over and over again without, um, wanting to. It's there. It's saying you need to work through this. You need to work through this experience so that you can continue forward, because that's the path that you need to go on, and you're ready for it. You just don't know it yet. And that was the case for me. So um, I didn't want to go through that experience, honestly, but I had no choice. And eventually I did. So I'm forever grateful for that challenge.
Yeah. I love that you shared that. Thank you so much. I hope that's an inspiration to others that are hearing this as well. We've One of the other things that I thought was really important that you shared in the book is not having other people interpret our dreams for us. It's great to have someone as a sounding board, but like the significance of the symbolism in the dream, that's really my unique interpretation, I apply symbols the way I see them, or I can interpret them. That thread. Can you speak a little about that?
Yeah, symbols are very complex in my understanding of them, in the sense that they are real and that they have form to them, they have substance to them, um, and they are universal. And uh, symbols are everything. So everything is actually a symbol. We generally attribute symbols to things that we think are meaningful, right? But that's not what a symbol is. That's a symbol, right? So like the Ouroboros, which is a symbol that I really have enjoyed all my life, and many people use it, is infinitely deep itself. But so is the stop sign, and so is the tree that you see out of your house, or your finger. These are all representations of things that are much greater than just the visual or the tactile touch of that thing. So it's symbolic of something else. It connects to something that's infinite. And so, but in that sense, in dreams, dreams are the same way. And dreams contain structure, and I describe it as kind of wallpaper on structure, and in the sense that the dream likes to pick up images that you've seen throughout your life, or you're experiencing in the day, or themes and sounds and music and everything like that. And it collects all that data, and it puts it over a structure, and to convey a clear message to you, the clearest message it can. So you know you may be watching something on TV, and then you may dream about it and wake up and go, oh, that, I was dreaming about that TV. I don't know why. That's stupid. But really what it's doing is it's taking that data from your daytime, and it's overlaying it into a theme and a story that has an important message to you. It's trying to communicate. So it's, in a sense, I use the experience of going to like another country and trying to communicate to somebody in another country that you want some certain food, and so you point to an image that's kind of understood by everybody. I want this. But if you try to say it, you might not be successful. And so the dream, in a sense, is trying to meet you more than halfway and say, these are images that you know of, and here's the message in it. Here I'm trying to communicate to you. Hopefully you get it. Most of the time we don't. So then it changes it up sometimes. Sometimes it repeats that image over and over. So, but in that sense, so dream dictionaries to me are kind of foolish in the sense that, somebody can go in and be like, oh, well, this is what that means. And so that, that's the end of it. But in a sense, in, without contradicting myself, if somebody was really into dream dictionaries, and they really kind of engaged with dream dictionaries, and the dream may actually pull some of that content from a dream dictionary or the themes that people generally look at through dream dictionaries and then put it into the dream to convey a message to you. So if you are, it's kind of like stick to what is good for you, that you're common with you, that language that you use throughout your life, essentially your symbols that you use, and then try to understand your dream from that perspective. So, but when other people, are involved into dreams, they tend to put their own flair on the dream that doesn't necessarily mean anything to you. So it's very, for me, it's inappropriate for somebody else to interpret somebody's dream for them. They can assist them in the sense that like they can point out some maybe important themes that maybe you didn't think of, or repeating patterns that maybe you don't see. And also, friends and family generally are in our lives and are part of those wallpaper that the dream is utilizing in order to convey a message. If you dream of a family member, it doesn't necessarily mean that your family member's doing that. It's taking the image and the idea of that person and overlaying it into the theme that is internal to you. And you also may project that into reality onto that person too. So this is very dynamic language taking place and very complex. So it's an art more than a science, in the sense that the more that you engage with it, the more that you try to understand the language of it, and the more that you write down and remember your dreams, the more you'll start getting the culture of the dream and building the language and speaking the language. And then the dream doesn't necessarily have to overlay as much data, and wallpaper over the structure. You can actually start seeing the structure for what it is, or at least closer, and then
Right.
see what's going on. And that's the case for my dreams and other people that have done that. And not all the time is the structure, it's the structure itself is very down deep in there, it's infinite itself. So you'll never really touch that structure, but you'll get more and more closer to it. And in the same sense, it's like, say you go to Japan and you're learning the language and all that, the culture is ever evolving, it's alive, it's a consciousness itself, and there's millions of people involved in that consciousness, and you too in the world. So it's not like you're ever going to just get it,
Mhm.
but you can start speaking language and start understanding the people and start becoming part of that culture through engaging with it. So it's the same thing with dreams.
So I'm kind of getting this image of my conscious and my unconscious trying to talk to each other. My unconscious keeps trying to get my conscious's attention and build a language that my conscious can understand to get my attention and get the messages out. That sounds like what you're laying out to me in greater detail, is just this attempt at connection between the unconscious and the conscious, and the journey that evolves into. Like for me, things like animal medicine and some of the things that I've picked up along the shamanic path have taken on meaning for me. And I do notice that shows up in my dreams now. So I can see how my unconscious is trying to communicate with me in the languages that I know what it wants me to look at next. I do get a lot from my dreams. I just haven't gone as far as lucidity with them. I have lucid moments, but I wouldn't say I've ever had like a full on lucid dream.
Yeah.
That would be interesting. I love how you're describing the symbolism. So you mentioned the symbol of your tail eaters group. You want to, what is it called again? The
Ouroboros.
Ouroboros. I actually had a vision of that after I started reading your book, and I'm like, okay, now that's coming into my awareness. I was aware of it, but not much. So you want to talk to us a little bit about what that's come to mean for you, that you created the group with that symbol?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, in the image itself actually came to me in a psychedelic experience itself, and I was being continually over and over eaten by a snake, and the image of the snake, you could say it popped up into my head because of the association to ayahuasca and things like that, and so but South American and uh, anacondas and things like that, and but in me experiencing that and drawing out that shape and trying to understand it more, it's essentially opened up a greater reality into that symbol. And so um, I really can't get into what it means because it doesn't mean one thing,
Right.
it means, well, it does mean one thing, but it's connected to that one thing, and so are all other symbols. So in a sense, like anybody that's really studied anything, any image whatsoever, essentially it leads all back to the same thing. So you could call it the source, you could call it God, you could call it the cosmos, whatever you want, but that's what it is. So the Ouroboros for me has been kind of a journey, a point to look at and say, well, what's in there? What's in the center of the circle? And it's led me into dreams. It's led me into um, the connection to dreams to reality and things like that. So um, I would say for listeners to take whatever symbol is meaningful to them. That when they ponder about things, what image pops up in their mind? What is that thing that really is like gravity to them? It's a magnetic pull to that image, really excites them, and start understanding and trying to study that one thing, and see where it takes them, because it it won't just take them to what the meaning of it is, because that's doesn't exist. So
Right.
you'll find that it is much more complex. What it does is it opens up a greater reality to you through studying one thing. So anybody that's studied anything to its greatest extent will see that it opens up uh, it opens up the unknown, and it also puts you in your place. You say, I actually don't really know anything. The more you know, the less you really realize
Exactly.
or the more you realize you don't know. So it's done that for me. And um, most of the people, like I have a group and things like that, and people are resonated to that symbol, had joined my group. And I'd say a good portion of those people have no concept of really what that symbol means to them. They haven't really explored symbols in the sense that
Mhm.
I've really tried to. But hopefully, that's their journey. It's not mine. So hopefully someday they may go down that rabbit hole and
Yeah.
see things differently.
Well, and I see you as a big invitation to explore what we don't understand. And for you, it's in the field through dreaming and astral travel and all of that. But at its core, it's just another pathway to getting to know ourselves better. And the journey inward is as infinite as the journey outward. So, yeah, it's a fun one for sure. We've been talking with Lee Adams again. This is his book on a visionary guide to lucid dreaming. Fabulous read, lots of good tips in here. It's very well laid out. There's lots of like lists and bullet points, and it's broken down well by chapter, so you can quickly find what you're really struggling with at the moment. But I invite you to go from cover to cover and kind of go through the journey, especially if you really want to dive into lucid dreaming at a deeper level or to start with. I like to conclude my interviews by asking my guest if you have a parting thought for us, something you'd like to touch on further or something we might not have captured today.
Yeah, the one thing I'd say, and something that I more recently became to understand is that dreams don't necessarily stop when you wake up, because dreams are symbolic and so is reality. And in that sense, being lucid during waking reality is just as essential as being lucid in a dream. And and people would say that reality is a dream. It is very much dreamlike. It's a great dream. And in that sense, reality is trying to communicate to you through the same structure and language that dreams are. And if you can engage with it to the level that I'm hoping people would, then you'll see things for what they are, and that'll open up the unknown. So take that for what you would like.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work that you're doing and for helping us raise our awareness. I appreciate the time you spent with us today as well. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening wherever you're listening or watching. And we hope that you will join us again and remember, all of our shows are at journeyofpossibilities.com. And we will see you in a couple of weeks again on Exploring Possibilities. Thank you so much.